Good evening, everyone. My name is Rex. For those that do not know, I'm the Education Director here at Lane Motor Museum. Welcome. This panel discussion, which is the first we've probably had ever, if not in a very long time, at least since I've been here. We're coming up next month on our 20th anniversary of operation. October 18th of 2003 is when this museum opened its doors to the public officially. And we had envisioned in doing all of these events for our 20th anniversary, discussion with these three gentlemen, who I'll introduce in a second, talking about how this came to be, what a wacky idea it was, and why they chose specifically this location and building, and what it was like 20 years ago, if they can remember. I'm kidding, I'm just kidding, kind of. So I'm going to do this talk show style format. I'm going to ask questions of each of them on down. We're going to have some back and forth, of course. Save your questions until the end. And while we are talking, think about things that may not get answered. We may answer your questions in due time, but no pressure on the audience here, but I expect a pretty robust question and answer session. I'm sure you're going to think of things that we have not thought of. Certainly I haven't. And we encourage you to hold those to the end, and we'll do a round robin and go around and get all of this stuff. And yes, the camera's behind us. We're not live. This is just for posterity's sake. Which will be on YouTube. But I wanted to capture these things for the future of this institution, which we, of course, hope goes long into the future. So, the panelists tonight, in addition to myself, Jeff Lane, our founder and director, of course, who you should know by now. Greg Coston, our restoration shop manager, who most of you do know if you do not already. And then our general manager, David Yando, will be joining us for this discussion. So I'm going to start with Jeff. And again, this is very free form. You tell me what you think or not think. For those that don't have the book, Hobby Gone Wild, and if you don't, shame on you. It's available in our gift shop and on sale on our website. Most everyone here especially knows the story of you and your MGTF and your dad Gene and how he got into cars and how you got into cars, which by the way, Jeff will be doing the next lecture series on October 14th next month. Members are invited to that as well, in addition to our dinner. Most of us know that story, but I think tonight, could you tell us a little bit about what the catalyst was for starting a museum, putting it into the museum format, as opposed to just keeping it a private collection to yourself, kind of frankly?
Sure. There's probably a couple of major things that happened that made me think about a museum. So years ago, I used to live on West End Avenue, and I had the T-87 and the Amphicar, and I would drive those cars home at night once in a while, right? And people would drive by and see them. And after, a period of time, maybe a year or something like that, the word kind of got out, hey, there's this crazy guy that lives on West End. He's got all these crazy cars and things like that. And I had one of my neighbors one time came over and asked me, he said, my son's 12th birthday is like next Saturday, or it's in 2 Saturdays or something like that. And he's crazy about cars, and we heard you have a bunch of cars, and for his birthday, he wants to see if he can come see the collection, right? And I said, sure, no problem. He said, I'll pay for it. I said, no, I'm glad to do it, I said, so we set up, it was a couple Saturdays away, I think, and at that point I had, I believe, I'm not sure if Greg had started working for me yet or not. I think maybe not, but I had one 5,000 square foot warehouse on Nolensville Road, and then some of the cars were in my Love Circle house that I rented, and then some of them were up in Hendersonville in a self-storage thing. So I had them, because the unit on Nolensville Road had the most cars, right? It had the most space, so I thought, well, I'll just take them over there and show them around. And so, they met me over there at like 10 o'clock in the morning, and, I had never met, I can't remember the kid's name now, but he came in, and it was so funny because this was the era where they had the throwaway cameras, right? And they were like 12 shots or 20 shots, something like that. I can't remember what they were. And I guess part of his dad's present to him was he had 2 of these cameras, right? Actually, I had two 5,000 square foot units there. So Greg probably did work for me by that time. But so we came into the first unit, and if you don't know, they were like, I don't know, 30 feet wide and 50 feet deep. So when you came in kind of the front door, it kind of looked, not like a bowling alley, but you look back, right? And the kid was, and it was full of cars, right? Totally full of cars. And the kid was going crazy, you know, and he's snapping away with the camera and like crazy. And you know, after about a minute, I said, well, hold it, there's another building, right? Don't use all your pictures in this building. He's like, another building, really? And I go, yeah, there's another building right next door. So we spent like an hour, you know, looking at the cars and stuff, and he really enjoyed it. But what happened with that, which happened, and I showed other people around, is people would say, I want to see the AMFA car, right? Or I want to see the T87, or I want to see this. And inevitably, the car was somewhere else. It was in Hendersonville, it was maybe at my house, you know, so you could never see everything, right? So that was a bit of a disadvantage. So that was always like, I was always like, well, this, you know, it works, but it doesn't work perfectly, right? And the other thing that would happen was, and I remember going to the Fiat meet in Asheville, North Carolina, which they get like 150 Fiats. It's the national Fiat meet, 150 to 200 cars. And they would have the show on Saturday, and then they would have a dinner on Saturday night where, you know, if you wanted to stay and have the dinner, people had dinner together and everything. And, you know, I'd done other shows like this, and what would happen was, you know, you'd be sitting at dinner with people, and the question always comes up, like, how many cars do you have, right? If you were a guitarist hanging out, you know, it would always be like, well, how many different guitars do you know how to play, right? So, you know, most people that like classic cars have more than one, right? I would say 5 to 10 is kind of a typical number. There are very few that have just one, but there's a few. But, you know, at that point I had about 70 cars. So when you told people, you know, I have 70 cars, you could see they'd look at you like, no, he has 60 cars sitting out in a field somewhere, you know, and then you kind of, well, no, they're all in a building, and, you know, half of them run, and you could see they didn't really believe it, right? Or they were very skeptical. So that was another impetus to do the museum. And so, and I got to the point when it got to about 75 cars, it really became obvious that to continue to collect, right, and acquire cars in that kind of just crazy style, right, I really couldn't go on much farther because the cars were getting spread in too many places. It was either, you know, stop collecting cars. I mean, you didn't have to do that, but I didn't want to be like one of those hoarders that has like 400 cars and half of them are sitting in a field type thing. So that's where the museum idea came about, is, you know, here's a chance to put them together, they'll all be in one place, more or less, right? They'll have staff to take care of them, more or less.
And you can share it with the public.
And you could share it with the public, which I always like to do. I mean, I enjoy sharing the cars with the public, so.
Yeah, I know the story of you would have friends come out to some of your warehouses and you hand them keys to something and you guys would go on a drive. I don't know if you remember doing that or not. That's a story you've told me, David's told me.
Yeah, we did a rally. Well, there used to be a club called Spokes, which did rallies on Saturday once a month, I think.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yep.
And we did a really innovative thing one Saturday. Most people, you brought your own car, right? And then somebody made up a rally, and it was a couple hours long. We had lunch,
Ended
right?
up with lunch, yeah.
So we told them one time, why don't we just take, you know, 20 of the cars, and they usually got 10 to 20 people that did it. It wasn't a big group of people, right? And 20 of the cars, and we'd just throw the keys in a box, right, or whatever, and people can just pick out a key, like the Pinsgauer and all that stuff. We did that once.
Yep.
It was a lot of fun.
Yep.
It was before Derek could have a heart
Oh,
attack.
you did it twice. We did it twice.
Our curator.
We did it twice.
We did it twice?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. But there was tons of fun.
And that's led to kind of what we do today, in a sense of sharing the cars with either the Rally for the Lane fundraiser or the various events where folks get to ride in the cars. And you've always been good about not just look, ooh, neat, great, but also experiencing something that's frankly a time machine. That's how I tell people to do tours.
Absolutely.
Good. That's so that may a little bit of behind the scenes there. Greg, Mr. Coston. I did this in order of hire, since you were technically Jeff's first hire, first of us staff. So prior to being the museum is when you came on board. Can you tell us about how he talked you into working for him, telling him how many cars he had, and you thought he was an insane person, and how you came on board, and was there anything interesting in that first kind of batch before the museum opened that caught your eye, that you thought this was something a little bit more different than just some quote-unquote regular car collection?
Yeah, well, there was about, he told me 80 cars. And I guess in the buildings we had probably 40 or 50 in the two buildings that were on Nolensville Road. And it wasn't that hard to convince me. I had been out of mechanics for a little while. I'd gone back to college and doing college type jobs and stuff, and didn't really see myself becoming a gas station mechanic or a dealer mechanic. That was kind of over for me. And Jeff and his interesting collection was very attractive.
How did you find out about it?
It was an ad.
Put an ad in the paper.
Yeah, we put an
So
ad in the
the
paper.
newspaper was a piece of paper that used to have words in it.
There was no Indeed back then
Right,
and
right.
all that stuff.
And it was very straightforward, you know, something like need a mechanic for a private collection of mostly European cars, maybe it's something like what it said.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't very descriptive or anything, but it caught my eye because, you know, like I said, it wasn't a gas station or I had done enough crazy type of things myself. I took one class in high school for mechanics, and the rest of it came as a matter of experience. So I wasn't put off by the idea that there were strange and interesting and different cars. I think I even warned you about the degree to which I take things apart. But yeah, I guess, you know, in the end, it was mechanical heaven. I could tell you some stories about mechanical hell, but all in all, it's mechanical heaven. I mean, anybody would be crazy that was anything like a, for lack of a better term, can you say grease monkey?
Yeah.
That you like these sorts of things and you're not interested in, I don't know if all of you are interested in mechanical things, but you know, the variety that we have here, rotary, 4-stroke, 2-stroke, gas, diesel, sleeve valve, electric.
You're having fun with electric today.
There's a steam thing around here somewhere. I want nothing to do with it, but the fact that we have one, new, old, it's funny because, you know, in perspective of time, you don't really, the evolution of machinery, of cars, you really see in this environment. And over a fairly short period of time, how quickly they evolved into, you know, what we have today, where we get in and we turn a thing on that makes it get cool and we put it in gear and it goes forward. I'm not so much into this whole braking thing for you and steering for you now, but, you know, that has to do with, but it's amazing how fast it happened in terms of the cars that we have, and, you know, not all of them are that seemingly that old. So it's a neat perspective. I sometimes wish that we could demonstrate that more effectively at a museum, but it's difficult to do without going through the shop.
Correct. You and I have talked many times about how that's what you looked for. We recently hired a new staff person in the shop, and it's not so much that you were an expert in, say, Italian cars specifically, or V8s, or you came from a race team. You needed somebody that was flexible. You needed a, like you said, a grease monkey actually more than a bespoke mechanic. You need both in a shop like this, but there's so much variety, and as you all know, probably the differences in the way countries and manufacturers build things and the different philosophies. It's staggering, the differences, and you have to have somebody that can do mental gymnastics and as quick as they can to get through even just a day's work in the shop. So. Which I guess that was you when you started on. They needed somebody, they needed a gymnast, I guess.
Just too at ease with it to worry about whether or not it's going to. I'm going to fix it in the end, but you know, we might go through the other stages first. But
right.
Yeah, I find it interesting still. Like I said, there's moments and days and cars that sometimes it just doesn't seem like it's worth the hassle, but you know, they all add up to lessons when it is important that you know the difference. It's funny sometimes in the engineering between the different cars, you wouldn't think that there'd be that much difference between Czechoslovakian and German, or German and French. they're close together, but you know, that's part of the evolutionary process too. I think that, you know, when you read the thing, a couple of cars we had the Stalworth, you know, inside the manual there's a thing about destroying it basically so the enemy can't get it. And I think sometimes the French and the German were always building mechanical things that the other couldn't understand.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, David, again, going in order of hire here. I suppose around this time that Jeff decided on the museum format and had someone that could fix the cars, he decided he needed somebody to help steer the ship, so to speak. So what was your background? I know how you know Jeff, but tell us how you came to know Jeff, and then after that, let me know how you came on board, and then tell us, and this can be a discussion for all of you, what the initial discussion between you and Jeff, what the museum would look like and feel like and be. So I'll let you.
Well, I'm an ornamental horticulture graduate from Auburn, so that's how I ended up in a car museum.
Handy.
So I've been living in Nashville for a while, moved here from Tullahoma in '87, worked at Cheekwood, the Botanical Garden and Fine Arts Center across town, and had been there for 14 years. And as Jeff mentioned earlier about Spokes, it was what I like to call a non-denominational car club. It was founded by a bunch of American Airlines pilots that moved up here when the hub was formed, when the new airport was built. And it was they didn't do autocrosses, and they wanted to do a hill climb, but we never could get that going. But they did a lot of gimmick rallies, and rallies were something that my wife and I enjoyed doing. And so we hopped on board and got to know Jeff. And Jeff, over the course of a couple of years, there was one weekend in particular when he invited everybody in Spokes to go out to the lake and play with the Amphicar and the Stalwart and his new submersible scooter. Jeff always has the good toys. You know, sometimes you'll hear him opening a box in his office, and you'll see him riding a little bicycle with 4-inch tires down the hallway. So, and then flipping it over up backwards. So you never know what to expect around here. But anyway, Jeff knew I worked at Cheekwood and asked me to consult. I think this was probably spring of 2001, as far as I recall. And so we met at his house on West End a few times. His desire was to open a museum. And the very first iteration that we talked about was, you know, find 40 or 50,000 square foot Butler building in an industrial park somewhere, move all the cars there, open up a small shop, and have it open to the public, but by appointment only. It wouldn't really be what we see today. The original idea was just going to be a small, privately accessible museum. If you knew about it, you could get in. And I would be pretty much, Greg and I would be the only staff people. But over time, we found that it just didn't make sense economically or philosophically to do that. And we really wanted it to be much more accessible. Jeff worked with a real estate agent and looked at a lot of commercial properties. He called me one day and said, I think we found a good building. Can you come over and look at it? And I think it was July of '02. Came here, and the building was something. Sunbeam Bakery had been here since 51 or so. They moved their baking operations from here in '94 and basically just let the building go. They still operated their truck maintenance out there. They had stuff stored in here up to the ceiling. They had K rations from the Korean War downstairs in a foot of water. There were holes in the ceiling over there where the ovens had been. There was an area back here where the chiller on the roof was starting to come through the ceiling. So it was a real mess.
So that leads me
but-
to, go
but-
ahead.
It was a great space.
Okay.
Lots of natural light, wide open. It's perfect for what we wanted. And we were originally looking for 40,000 square feet. If you added all Jeff's spaces together when I first met him, it was between 14 and 14,500. So it would have tripled what we had. But I mean, we have outgrown this space several times over the years. So we're very glad that we got 150,000 square feet when we did.
Well, that's a good segue into my next question back to Jeff is, I know what David saw in this. What did Jeff see in this building? What was your initial impressions, besides just the actual footprint, as you mentioned, besides the usable space? What did you see in this lesser used, maybe a little bit run down in places kind of building?
It was kind of, when you came in, it was kind of hard to see anything, because when we came in, like where the 4 doors are, the lobby was there kind of where it was, but there was only one door, I think, that came in, right?
One door and frosted glass on both sides.
Yeah.
The bushes were overgrowing the sidewalk.
And you came in and you really couldn't see much because there was stuff just stacked. Right? I mean, this whole part that was paved, the floor got ruined because they let the roof go. But we really couldn't see that initially because, again, there was pallets and pallets of stuff, right? So it looked like a wreck. But I agree with David. I mean, we liked the windows. It was a big space. There was a lot of, indoor parking garage. They had the shop where they worked on their vans, which I'm thinking, oh, great restoration shop. But, it already had some of the things you need. But it was so full of junk. So, and then, you'd think you'd go in the basement, it wouldn't be as bad. And it was even worse down there, right? I mean, it was like this little aisleways, and they were pack rats. They had pallets of cardboard boxes that had gone obsolete in the 80s and never thrown them away. I mean, not just one pallet, but like 10 pallets. So, and they had pallets of bread pans that they'd never used and now were the wrong size. And
Was there any bread left? Was it edible?
No. And, some of the equipment was here, but some of it they had sold off some of the ovens and stuff.
Yeah, they recycled a lot of the bread pans. They had 2 truckloads of bread pans that they were sending to South America because they didn't fit any of the ovens in North America that were still in use.
Right.
It smelled like bread for years, though.
It still does on the right day.
It really did a little bit, yeah. But we could see the potential, but it was, you had to look.
Yeah, gotcha. And this area, which was this area of Murfreesboro Pike, it is still today an industrial area, but way back when it was open, this was a kind of a hopping part of town, correct? It was sort of a corridor for...
No, this was a pretty sleazy part of town.
I'm talking about back when it opened.
Back when it opened, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Or so, when it was running.
All the prime car dealerships and restaurants were on Murfreesboro.
Because on Murfreesboro Road, the BMW dealer was there, and the
Mercedes,
Volkswagen,
Porsche.
and, I mean, when everything was smaller, so...
Well, and that leads into also, Greg and I have talked this week about the shop in its early days, and this is all sort of similar. So I think it'd be fun to see, because I'm going to add pictures to the video. This is the idea behind this video. There was a van, there was a delivery van, correct? That they use a shop to work on some of the delivery vans for the routes here in Nashville. But otherwise, the shop was. Could you see the potential in the restoration shop, which I know you had to kind of customize?
No, that's kind of a blur. But
yeah.
I mean, it was just me, so I
Right.
kind of made it what I thought was right and built a whole bunch of workbenches. Thank God I did that. Painted the floor, the walls.
Put in the airlines.
Yeah, the airlines. We did a lot of work in there. I did a lot of work in there.
Yeah.
I don't know, I was thinking about it the other day.
You remember taking out the cage where they did the night deliveries?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
pouring the floor for the machine
Yeah,
shop?
the floor was built up in order
Yeah.
to make it even with the shop, because it was a,
Yeah, it was where a truck
loading
dock-
ramp,
Yeah, it was below ground
yeah.
loading.
yeah, that was helpful.
So you purchased the building, approximately a year and a half before? Did you have a target date for opening? Or
I
not
think
yet?
we bought it like a year before we opened.
We bought it, I think you bought it late July of '02. It was a few weeks after we first saw it.
Okay.
And
Our goal, well, I think we talked to, we got an architect first and then did some preliminary drawings and talked to a contractor to get some kind, because I don't think we really had an idea at first, right?
we did, but they were very unrealistic.
Yeah, but even a year, I mean, that isn't that long of a,
No.
No.
in my mind, right?
And our goal was to change as little as we could, make it compliant with life safety stuff, and go from there.
Right. So step one, of course, was to clean out all those pallets of cardboard and machinery and crap.
Yeah, we cohabitated with Sunbeam as they were moving out for about 6 months. We had a line on the floor, and they were to stay on one side, and we were to stay on the other, and they were working during the day on cleaning out this area, cleaning out the basement, And then we were working, we had an office trailer in the garage where the restoration shop is now. And we were in there for probably 6 or 8 months.
Yeah.
And so Jeff and I and Currier worked out of that space. And Greg was going back and forth from the Nolensville Road shops, coming over here, helping out with stuff. And then we worked on this side doing demo. We had family and friends came in. Some of Jeff's family members came in from all over and helped demo tile off the floor and take down fixtures and save signs and things like that. So.
Yeah, some of your demo stories that
Yeah.
may not be part of the, it's very interesting that you, without getting in trouble with OSHA retroactively, what were some of the major things you had? Because again, if it was A, full of stuff,
Yeah.
and B, a former bread factory, you know, this is very open plan now, but you had to modify a lot of that for just holding cars and having exhibit space. So tell me some interesting demo stories, which I know you've got a bunch of.
Well, my office used to be the ladies' showers.
Oh, yeah.
And I have very vivid memories of pulling up a manhole cover and the biggest cockroaches I've ever seen in my life came out. Thousands of them just erupted like Vesuvius. And so, yeah, I still remember that.
Because they hadn't been used, some parts of this building have been used since 1994
Yeah,
or so. Or about 6 or 7 years.
as a working factory, it had not been used for 8 or 9 years.
Amazing.
And it just was sat fallow. And the only people here were a few maintenance people that kept some material supplies stored down in the basement, and then the truck shop. And otherwise, they had the person who managed the Day Old Bread store, which was over on Foster. They had an office here. The general manager, I think, kept an office, and the secretary, and that was about it. The front lobby was very different, as Jeff mentioned.
Yeah.
And
Where the
floor
gift shop was the supercomputer, and it was just an empty room when we got it, and that was my first little office. I had a drawing table in there and set up.
And the open ceilings we see now, they're baffles. I always ask you this.
There were, yeah.
What did you have to take down out of the ceiling? Explain. to them.
Greg was very instrumental in that.
Do
Once
tell.
we figured out that it was very, very heavy and difficult to take down, they had very heavy gauge corrugated sheet metal that extended from the underside of the ceiling down to the bottom of the first beams that you see. And if you see the dark stripe along that beam there, and then there's another one back here, they built these containment walls, we think. They were trying to direct the heat of the ovens up and out through the vents in the ceiling. We're pretty sure that's what they wanted them to do. And we wanted to take those out to give it a sense of airiness, and also because we needed to run electrical and all that sort of stuff. So we started trying to take them down, and they were just too much for Tim and I. Tim was my first hire. I hired him in January of '02, and he was our building superintendent and very instrumental. He passed away last July of last year. And we miss him a lot, but he and I did a lot of the demo here, and it was just beyond what we could do. So we called on Greg, and Greg came and studied and looked and figured. And these panels were, I don't know, 10 feet wide and 4 to 5 feet tall, and they weighed a couple 100 pounds. I mean, you look at sheet metal and you think it's not that heavy, but so we figured out, we early on had bought a scissor lift, a 26-foot scissor lift, so we could come in and get up and access things wherever we needed. It was one of the best purchases we ever made. So Greg brought over some cutting torches and some rope, and we had this system where he would pop a little hole in the panel, unbolt it all the way around the outside, leaving one bolt in place. Then he'd tie a rope to a wrench and stick it through the hole and pull it back so it was lodged in the backside of the sheet metal. And then we'd all belay the rope around our waist, and he'd take that last bolt out, and then we'd hope that that panel wasn't heavier than the last one. And we did have one that lifted some of us up off the floor, but it was a balancing act. So that was probably one of the most time-consuming and memorable things that we did here.
Yes, again, all with safety in mind, of course. But
Yeah,
still,
yeah.
it's
OSHA approved.
it's a lot of demo to get, again, an old factory converted. You think it's just an open building, but it's not in essence. Well, so demo's done. The walls are painted. The shop is sort of in place. You picked an opening day. We're going to fast forward just slightly. Greg and Jeff and David, can you guys speak to, as with all new businesses and especially museums, things aren't always perfect on an opening day, whether it be a bread factory or a lemonade stand or, again, an automobile museum. Do you all, what was kind of going through your head, Jeff? What were your expectations? Did you have any? Were you optimistic, cautiously optimistic? Not really?
We had been open for a couple of weeks, right?
We opened on the 13th without any announcement. We just
Right.
unlocked the doors and waited to see if people came. And it was really just sort of a soft opening. We could see if the bathrooms worked, if the doors unlocked, if the lights came on when they were supposed to. And that gave us a week to sort of fine-tune things. And then our official opening was going to be on the 18th.
Yeah,
And-
yeah. So I guess I didn't have any great expectations. I mean, I think it turned out great. We had an ice cream truck here. We had stuff for the kids, and the good thing about it was free, right? So there wasn't like a lot of logistics about people had to pay, people were going to be in line. So people kind of came and went kind of as they wanted, and we were a little worried about, because I guess half of our parking's in the back, that type of thing. But I think it worked out pretty good. I mean, it was busy, but it wasn't like a madhouse type of thing. So it went very well. And I think, as I remember, it didn't rain that day, which was a good thing.
It was a beautiful day.
It was a beautiful October day.
We had a color guard, flag raising. They sang the national anthem. We invited the mayor. I don't think he came, but I think he sent a representative. City council person was here. We had a bluegrass band. We had Purity Dairy, which is just up the street, brought over 1,000 ice cream sandwiches to give away. So it was kind of a community event. It was a lot of fun, and it was super busy. I look back at the pictures from that day. One of our founding members, Andrew Duthie, I don't think he's here tonight. He came and took pictures, thank goodness, because nobody else had time. It was all day long, meeting people, showing off cars. It was a crazy day. It was fun.
I don't remember all this ice cream.
Were you
You
here?
were here.
I was here, but I don't remember all this
Really?
ice cream
Okay.
you guys are talking about.
You probably didn't get any of the ice
Somebody
cream.
didn't tell me about the ice
Maybe you were
cream.
hanging around the free pizza
I
guy.
can't believe that. You know me better than that now, right?
Yeah. Nobody tells you anything. We learned. And I know you don't remember, and I forgot to look it up myself, our opening day attendance or opening week attendance. It was probably what you expected at the time. But very basically, our numbers of attendance have gone up. A little hiccup, of course, in 2020 and 21, like most museums and cultural institutions. But it's just, if you look at the graph over time and watch the numbers just go up and up and up, and our memberships raise, and our engagement with the community has gone up. It's been a lot to build on from that first week or so. And then I have one more question for you, Greg. Well, no, this is actually for everyone. Over the last 20 years, is there any, and it could be anything from a specific car that I know you have lots of favorites, and I know you have lots of not favorites, things that are giving you headaches and nightmares and such. But in addition to the cars or memories, is there anything, we'll start with Jeff, that has really stood out to you over the last 20 years that's something that's just the best, or is it all just, again, a big mishmash?
It's. I mean, I do have favorites, right? But I like everything.
Yeah, right.
Some things a little less than
there's
others,
something
and
you-
I like things that are actually do run.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they go down on my list if I can't get them going. But I mean, I enjoyed, like, the Amphicar is a fun car, right? I mean, it's people love to see it go in the water. It's always a hit. Even on the road, people are just enthralled with it. You would think after it being driving around Nashville for 20 years, right? But still people are just enamored by it. I mean, I like the propeller-powered cars just because of the craziness. I really enjoy the micro cars, just for the sheer craziness of those. But there's nothing here that that I hate.
They just hate. I know.
Yeah.
I know that. I know he has a different answer for that. Is there any car or restoration project that you've really been proud of, or a specific thing?
It's all a blur to me. I mean, between fixing, restoring, helping others, there's just so many of them. I guess I think about, the only thing I can think about is what's in the shop now. Looking forward to finishing Chuck, Voisin, C28, and that has been in the project stage for a long time. Oddly enough, I kind of miss, I've got to do some work on the Windwagon and the Layat, less important. But I used to every once in a while start the Windwagon up, and I kind of miss it. Driving something with a bloody propeller is kind of a little nutty,
Agreed.
You get wind. I've driven that thing during summer, winter, fall. Winter is the worst. You have no idea what that velocity of air will do to you when it's cold. But I kind of miss that. I'm looking forward to maybe one day putting it back in order. Other than that, like I said, I don't know, 20 years, and sometimes I think about it. What have you been doing all this time? And, it's hard to add them up. If you had restored, a car every year, you'd have that count, but more or less, 80% of what we do is fixing, maintaining, keeping them running. And it's, it could be a lot more trouble, a lot more work than you actually think to do that. So,
As of last count, on that opening day, we had somewhere just shy of 100 cars or so on the floor here. No.
About 80, 85, 83 or so.
I thought it was close to.
I think there were 2 cars, if I remember right, the initial gift was about 85 cars. And I think all but 2 of them were on the floor.
Oh, okay.
The Unimog, I don't think, made it on the floor, and your old, was it a Monte Carlo or a Chevelle or something?
The stock car?
Yeah, the NASCAR
Okay,
thing.
yeah, Caprice Classic.
The Caprice Classic. I think it was still in the basement, but I think the basement was essentially empty, and there was so much room up here with only 85 cars. It was crazy. There was just a big snaking line of micro cars, and then just little smatterings here and there. It was kind of great. It's nice now that there's a lot to see, but it had its moments.
I'd like to go back to those days.
As of last count, not including the one that Derek went to go get, we were somewhere in the neighborhood of 540, give or take 1 or 2 or 3. So, and that's ebbed and flowed. And yes, we are working on, because we're out of storage space. We've been out of storage space for years. So, is there anything that, car or not, or trip or Concours? Or?
There are just so many. I mean, I have to be so thankful for the opportunities and the experiences that the museum has offered my wife and I. It's just unbelievable. One of the things that I really remember very fondly was the Indianapolis Motor Speedway at their 100th anniversary was having a Concours, and they don't generally have a Concours. And so we took the Tatra T87. We drove it up there, and all the way up there, everybody, because cell phones were kind of new then, everybody was taking videos and taking pictures, and so it was they were kind of pests on the way up. And we parked on the apron around the track, and then we all got to do parade laps. And I have a picture that one of their sponsors took of us. I've got the picture of the T87 on the bricks in front of the pagoda, and that was just one of those opportunities that would have never happened if it hadn't been for the museum.
I'll echo that. I tell people what I do outside of the museum world, and I get a lot of, that's not a real job. I don't believe you. That's not a thing that you do. So I resemble that remark. I agree. It's a fun place to work. It's a lot to do, of course, with a small staff, but I'm biased, but I'm proud of us as well. So
I agree too, if it wasn't for the ice cream.
Oh, sorry. I'll make it up to you. I'll give you some ice cream.
I mean, I'm fully in on that. I'm blessed and happy and everything.
Tomorrow,
but the ice cream, it's really bothering me right now.
So at this time, Rebecca, if you have the handheld mic, if you guys would like to ask us or them anything, and I mean anything within reason, please watch your language, I'm kidding. So we'll start with Steve over here. So I'll have Rebecca hand you a microphone, and then you ask away.
So, Jeff, and David and Greg, the uniqueness of this museum, I mean, compared to most museums in the U.S., you concentrate on non-American marks. Was that the original intent, or was that the vision when you first had 70 or 80 cars, or did that become the museum's vision once you got this building?
You know, honestly, in the beginning, I don't know that there was a vision, right? I mean, I bought cars that I liked and thought were interesting, and with time, that coagulated into unique and different, right? And I don't know that, and it wasn't that it had to be non-American, right? Because we have a few. There's an American car there, right? So it just tended to be, I guess, more European. So, but in the beginning, honestly, there wasn't like a cohesive vision.
I always find it interesting. It's still in my memory is first couple of times I met Jeff. He drove up in the Lotus Elise, and that looked normal. The guy with the collection of cars in the Lotus Elise. The next time I see him, he's in a ratty old Fiat, and it's the same guy with the same smile on his face.
Or Big Orange.
Or Big Orange, yeah, that was. But it was the same Jeff. He doesn't really care that much. I mean, there's something obviously that thrills him about each individual thing, but whether or not it's this beautiful showpiece or that it runs, apparently, is the main thing. Which I've been trying, but without ice cream, what am I going to do?
But Jeff wasn't really biased. I've seen pictures. He owned a Granada at one point.
Yeah, I did.
Well, you
My
took
high
it-
school graduation present.
Right. Yeah, correct. I was going to say. you
But,
got that
but
in
what
high
was your college graduation present?
Well, I had to buy that for myself.
Yeah.
It was my 9/11.
Right. Yeah. So your taste changed.
Well, in that case, I got to choose, but in a high school present, I wasn't going to ask for a 9/11. Maybe I should have, but I probably wasn't going to get it.
I mean,
so.
they did market the Granada as a better Mercedes.
Right, absolutely, yeah.
Yes, Richard.
Actually, I have two questions. The first one is, I'm blessed to be able to be a volunteer up here for about 8 years. And are we full?
Is there storage, you mean?
Are we full?
I am speaking for them, but I'd say yes.
Not for
but-
Jeff. You're not speaking for Jeff, right?
I'd say yes.
Okay.
That would be my answer,
So
yes.
it's kind of like one comes in, one's got to go out.
That's the plan.
Yeah,
Okay.
actually.
Yeah.
You know how plans are, right?
Yeah.
Always.
The other question is kind of an A and a B. What is the greatest accomplishment you feel about this project? And what is, I don't want to say disappointment, but what have you not been able to accomplish that you would like to accomplish?
What was the first question?
What do you see as your greatest accomplishment with this
accomplishment.
project, and what have you not been able to do that you'd like to do?
Yeah, I think, greatest accomplishment. I think for me, the greatest thing is that, it's an entity that people can come and see and experience somewhat at different levels, right? I mean, some people just get to come in and look and don't get to go for a ride or be on a rally or something like that. But I get, I spend a lot of time on the road and a lot of time in my office, but I spend a little time out here, right? And a lot of people say it's a great collection, we loved it, it's very interesting, or my son saw it on YouTube 2 years ago and we came here. So to me, that's nice that it's bringing some joy to people's lives, right? So that part is really good. What haven't I accomplished? What am I disappointed? What haven't I been able to? I don't. It's always. I never think about. You haven't done this yet, because I'm always thinking, well, there's more time, right? So I can do that in the future. So I don't really. Some people are always like, oh, it's going to rain tomorrow, and blah blah blah, and I'm like, so what? It's going to rain, but so I don't know that. I don't know how to answer that.
He's being nice to me and not saying he wants more things running.
Well, I'd love to have all the cars running, but that's not realistic.
Yeah.
I'll think about that. We'll put an ice cream machine in the
Yeah,
office.
if he had known.
Instead of everything gets done on Monday, when you finish a car, you get
get 2
free
scoops.
ice cream.
Boy, I might get something done that way.
Until you can't fit in the cars anymore.
That's true.
Any other questions? Oh, Graf? Yeah, hand it to Graf.
So of all the cars you have here, can you tell me one that actually drives better than you would imagine?
So the Lotus Elan, the blue one here, you know, I think is a super driving car. The lease is great. Also the Fiat 500, the old Fiat 500s, I think are great driving cars for what, you know, again, it's for what they are, right? Well, so this would be a couple of my picks. You know, honestly, my TF, so 55 now, 80 years old or 70 years old, you know, I drove it the other day, a couple weeks ago, and, you know, it's really a pretty good driving car. And if you were in that time period, it's a great driving car, right? Everything's relative to time, but those would be a few of my picks.
My favorite's always been your dad's.
The TC?
Yeah.
MGTC?
Yeah. It drives like I think a car should
Yeah.
drive.
2 CVs. I mean, 28 horsepower, front wheel drive, not my kind of thing, but I love driving anything 2 CV derived. The umbrella shifter, you can do it with one finger. You can't turn it over. Not that I try. But Chris Harris on YouTube tried and couldn't flip his own. But just wonderful cars. And simple, you can take them apart with your bare hands, almost no tools. And they just drive nice.
I guess this is to you, Jeff, but maybe somebody else can answer it better. Like most of us, when I go around the country on business and I find a motor museum, I love to go, and I'm constantly reminded of how happy I am that you're here. But over the 20 years, have you seen a change? It seems like there are more museums now. Maybe there was just a lull and they've come back. But have you seen a change around the country, and kind of what is your favorite museum other than here?
Yeah, I think there are more museums than there used to be, although there's kind of a, you know, some have come and gone. But I guess, I don't know why that is, right? I mean, a lot of collections or a lot of museums are started by enthusiasts that, you know, decide that they want to do a museum type, although not all of them, right? Favorite museum? That's a, you know, listen, I've been to a lot of museums, and I'd have a hard time picking a favorite, because I think when I go to and not just a car museum, but mostly car museums, right? I'm more focused on, you know, what they have that kind of would be interesting to people, that people are attracted to and like. So it'd be hard for me to say the Peterson or, you know, whatever other museums there are. I mean, there's a ton of other, and I don't want to pick on any one museum. So I enjoy every museum for what it represents. I do like oddball cars, but you know, I've been to the Corvette Museum more than a few times, and it's really interesting, right? I'm not really a Corvette fan, but that doesn't matter. And I've been to other museums that are mostly American classics from the 50s and 60s, Chevy Bel Air, Mustang, and that type, which is not something that is hugely interesting to me. But I still enjoy the museum because they kind of portray, you know, what that has. It's like up at the Gilmore, I like the Gilmore a lot, which is the one in Michigan that has a main museum, and then it has a Model A museum, and it has a Franklin museum. They've done a really neat thing on it. It's a big farm in Michigan, and they have a campus, and so what they've done is like the Franklin Club that, you know, Franklin made cars for, 25 years, American, pretty limited production, but they want to do a museum, but for them to actually staff it, it's not really practical, right, for a small museum like that. So they have a building that has Franklin. So that's I think, a really neat concept. But, you know, I'm not a big Model A fan, but, you know, you go and see a Model A museum and they have all these different Model A's, and then they have the brochures, and then all the tools they use to fix them, and I mean, all that stuff's interesting to me. Yeah.
I'll answer some of your museum question. A lot of the trend in car museums is because car collecting has become a much bigger hobby in general. Some of it's because it's become very lucrative in the higher circles. And then therefore, when you have collected some of these marks that either are unknown and kind of orphan brands or high end, you get to a point where you go, what do I do with this? It's the same question around the country and world. And so, yes, there's quite a bit more car museums, and you'll see a lot more, I think, even coming online. There's some in development now as we're talking after COVID. So, yeah, it's just because there's more collectible cars, and the timeline is shifting. You want to keep the early stuff, but now we've added cars from the 90s are now 30 years old, so that kind of thing. So.
Hi, I don't really have a question. I just want to say how much I appreciate that this museum, it embodies kind of that mechanic spirit. It feels like a garage, but it's very open. I went to the Peterson Museum a few months ago, and frankly, it's kind of highbrow, more like I don't know, fancy. And this is very accessible. Anybody that comes to Nashville, this is my #1 spot to tell them to go to. They're all here for the music scene and all that. But I was like, you just got to check this out, and anybody, like my sister, she's not a car person. I brought the whole family down, and it just blew their mind. It's just fun. And I'm glad that it's kind of kept it that lowbrow, just a fun place to be. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the highest praise, with someone who's not a car person comes here and walks out and goes, that was great, I love it.
Yeah, we get that a lot. I work in the gift shop some, relieving people for lunch. And we get people that come in because TripAdvisor told them it was a good place to come in Nashville. And when they leave, invariably, they're like, we're so glad we came. We didn't know much what to expect. And like Jeff said earlier, you can appreciate the collection on so many levels. I mean, if you're an engineer, you can appreciate some of the weird stuff here. If you're an artist, if you're a historian, an economist, I mean, there's all kinds of things. Rex has a program where we have sight-deprived individuals will come in and they'll do touch tours. We have the Stallworth Rehab Clinic brings in people that just need to experience bright colors, and they all leave happy, and it's just such a great feeling, and we're so glad to be part of the community.
I met a lady out here one day that she was from California, and she was here on a business conference for the week, and her husband told her husband was a car enthusiast, and he said, you have to go to the Lehman Motor Museum. And she came and spent half the day, and she's like, he is so jealous that I got to come here. And he didn't, right?
Yeah, we hear that
And
a lot.
she said, I'm not a car person, but I liked it. I like the colors, I like the shapes and the different.
Yeah.
So, you don't need to be a car enthusiast to enjoy it.
I'll make one comment from spending so much time on the floor greeting guests. The two questions I ask is, how did you find us? And I mean, it's the whole gambit. And the other thing is, what are you doing in Nashville? And over the time, I've counted, the #1 thing they're doing in Nashville, and it's the women and the men, they're here for a wedding, or what do you call the
Bachelor
party.
bachelor or bachelorette parties. That is the #1 group that I've seen over the last 3 years. So South Broadway, 2nd Avenue downtown has nothing on us, man.
If we had more ice cream, maybe we would attract a better group of people. Huh? Oh, well.
I have a question, probably more for Jeff, but how do you find cars to bring into the museum? Like what resources do you use to find cars that are out there that you want to get for the museum?
Well, it's really a combination, right? So part of it is us hunting, right? That's part of it. But being a museum is a big draw. People know about the museum. There's people that have cars that they've had for years, and they're getting older, and they're like, my kids don't care about them, or I don't want to sell them on eBay, right? I'd rather it go to a collection where it can be taken care of and people can see it, right? So that's a pretty big draw for us. But again, we spend some time hunting. But the other good thing is a lot of people know the museum, like in the U.S. and in Europe, and they might be somewhere and see a car that they think would fit our collection, and they would, they'll send us a picture or some information about it, right? I mean, I get probably 20 of those a week at least, right? So it's a collaboration.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I get an email from a friend who lives, California or whatever. Hey, y'all need one of these. I was like, we've already got two. It's just with 600 or 550 cars, you just can't have everything on display. And some things that we've had downstairs for a long time and have never been upstairs, but they'll rotate in eventually.
Right.
So, yeah.
We want to get the mic so we can get it recorded. Thank you.
Is there an exhibit you'd like to stage that you haven't done yet?
There's an exhibit that I always wanted to do, which I would call the folding exhibit, right? Folding cars, folding motorcycles, folding airplanes, folding bicycles, folding campers. And one of the reasons we haven't done it is we're working on a folding car that's back in the corner back there in the wood shop, which we kind of, it'd be kind of silly to do a folding exhibit without having a folding car, right? So I think that would be a really interesting exhibit. Yeah.
You guys got two? Any exhibits we haven't done yet?
Nothing comes to mind. I mean, we've done a lot with what we've got, and Derek, our new curator, is coming up with new ideas and different ways to interpret things that we've looked at for so long, and he's just seeing them in new light. So, always interested to see what we come up with next.
We have such variety. It's I wouldn't say endless, of course. No museum is endless, but we've got years and years and even decades of ideas to either add to or take what we have and do exhibits on. So the sky's the limit is how we look at it now, with just just pick an engine, pick a country, pick a manufacturer, pick a drive style, sporting, utilitarian, doesn't matter, military. It's endless. So good question.
So, since this is the old Sunbeam factory, why don't we have a Sunbeam?
Like a Sunbeam Tiger? We do have one. David has one.
I've got an Alpine.
Alpine, yeah.
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 And it may end up here someday, you never know.
People have asked that question before. Yeah, that's a good, and I think there was an English company
Yeah.
called Sunbeam too.
Roots Group.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a Roots Group.
But was
car.
there another one that was just Sunbeam? That wasn't part of the British Leyland Roots thing? I don't know.
I don't think so.
Were they? Okay.
Well, yeah, there was, and then a motorcycle and car, and then once they were joining Roots. Yep, the Bluebird, yep.
Okay.
In some of our pictures, Sunbeam Bread Factory used Mercedes-Benz delivery vans at some point in the late 1960s, mid-1960s.
Yeah, they were the first ones to use them in Nashville, and the first aluminum delivery trucks, and there was a whole line of them out in the garage. We got a picture of them, and they probably had 30 of them.
So my opinion is, and I've told the curator, he's well aware of this idea, of to find one of those, and I'm sure that none are left with the actual livery still on the side, the pretty blue and red and yellow colors of the Sunbeam Bread Factory, but it'd be great to find one of those and then just paint it as a representation of what came out of this factory 3 shifts a day for almost 365 days out of the year. So eventually I think that we need to tie it to the building, but yeah. Question.
And I think, speaking of Sunbeam Bakery, I think somebody asked the question, did we find any bread?
Yeah.
So Tim and I, we'd been open at least a year probably, and we had a water leak in what's now the archive room, and we were trying to figure out where it was coming from. We went up on the roof, which is a sub-roof inside the garage, and there was a loaf of Texas toast sitting up there that looked like it was right off the store shelves and had to have been sitting up there at least a year because we'd been in the building for almost 2. And it looked spanking new fresh. And I don't remember what we did with it.
Oh, I was going to ask how your sandwich was.
When we first opened, we had a little Sunbeam display over there, and we had a gondola with Sunbeam products on it. We had, the Evers had loaned us the little red wagon that sort of a scale model of a delivery vehicle, and a couple other things. And on this gondola, we had Sunbeam bread products, and they lasted 6 or 8 months, and they looked fine. And then one day we came in, and there were just bags of green from overnight. I mean, it was amazing. So store-bought bread, lots of preservatives.
Well, if there are no more questions, we want to thank you all for coming out tonight. We want to thank you for your continued support, of course, of this museum. And we hope to see you at the next event. And again, we really, this is cliche and schmaltzy, but we can't do it without you guys. Why have a museum if nobody comes to see it and enjoy it and is passionate and fervent about it as Jeff and the staff are. So thank you guys very much. Thank you for coming out tonight. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Chuck Hanna.